And Sue?
You're on mute.
Unmute, Sue.
Okay. Are you asking me to open the Washington County Committee? Okay. Thank you. And we'll open the Washington County Committee meeting. Do we have a?
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think we got all of our technology straight, and thank you and welcome to our joint county meeting. It's so nice to have you back. And 2 years ago, when we were working from home, we upgraded our graphics here in this room, and it just, we haven't had a lot of meetings in here in a while, so it's just nice to be able to show off some new spaces here on campus. So welcome everyone. We have a few things to go over this morning, and I'm going to start with an update about the college. So let's see. So of course it's been a busy year, and I've been updating here and there for both counties, but just as a reminder, a lot of great things happen in a year at SUNY Adirondack. And of course, being back in person much more readily this year allowed us to re-engage a lot of our students, our faculty and staff. And so this is just a little montage of some happenings this year. You'll see up that woman that's looking so happy. We had an engagement announcement at Season this spring at an event of two of our culinary students. So that was very exciting. We've been working with Hudson Headwaters on our mobile health unit, which has been on campus every other week in the spring semester. And it's starting to get some traction with our students. So being able to bring healthcare on campus for our students and our community has been a great partnership. What's that? Sure. Oh, how's that better? There we go. We finished out our 60th year. Believe it or not, last year was our 60th year of 2021. The college was founded in 1961, and we're 60 years in strong and expect.
Because I got tested and they wouldn't let me come back until the PCR. I got it at 5:30 this morning. I went
on Zoom. You need to mute, please. Let's see who we need to mute. As I said, you'd think 2.5 years into this, we'd all get it straight, but we all do these things. So thanks for your patience. So anyway, a lot of great things been happening at the college, and I want to just share with you what priorities we set for ourselves this year. And there we go. So there were 5 major priorities we set as an institution. Of course, managing the ongoing pandemic. We launched Adirondack 2025, which is our new strategic plan. We spent a lot of time talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging, and particularly reviewing the work the college had done for several years to provide a path forward. We had 2 new grants. One that we received in 2019, we're in our 3rd year of a Department of Education grant. Another grant that we received from the Department of Education, both to support student success. And we've been talking a lot about the workplace of the future, which I imagine many of you might be talking about in a variety of ways. So I'll update you on some of these things. So not to talk about COVID too much, because no one wants to talk about it anymore, I get it, but we did a great job of managing this ongoing pandemic. And just some statistics, from the start of classes to the end of classes, we had about 300 students that reported positive cases over that period of time. We administered over 7,000 on-campus surveillance tests to faculty, staff, our students, of course, and Plattsburgh students and employees, and also about 75 cases in employees. So considering the magnitude of the amount of testing and what has been happening in our community, I would say that we did a great job of containing any sort of spread. We had no major disruptions to instruction or any other activities. And particularly in the residence hall, which you would anticipate have been a place that maybe there would be spread. And we actually had the least amount of cases in our residence hall. So, so good news for the college and good news for our community. The SUNY did put a vaccine mandate in place last fall. So every student that wanted to take at least one in-person class was required to be vaccinated or have an approved medical or religious exemption. We did great work in that space. 98% of our students were vaccinated. And about 90-ish% of our employees have also been vaccinated. We've been working towards continuing to encourage the booster. We expect the vaccine mandate to stay in place for this fall. And the booster is highly recommended. So these are the 4 major goals of our strategic plan that we're calling Adirondack 2025, focusing on developing innovative programs and services, of course, expanding enrollment, encouraging and championing student success, and strengthening our organizational capacity. So just a few highlights in each of those goals. We've been working on a lot of short-term credentialing types of programs in our non-credit continuing education workforce innovation department. We've had a very successful IT boot camp in Python, which is actually a programming language, not the snake, and that really focuses on the industry of data analytics. And we've had very good enrollment in those programs and have pent up demand. We also started a sterile processing technician program at Saratoga this spring to support our, of course, growing healthcare industry. We also received just recently a SUNY grant to increase the number of registered nurses, preparing more RNs to fill the huge gaps in our healthcare industry. That grant will allow us to focus on a cohort of current LPNs to help them move into becoming an RN. And what's unique about this opportunity, the courses primarily will be offered at Saratoga. We won't have to increase our faculty, which is of course a huge expense. And quite frankly, it's hard to find full-time faculty in nursing these days. So we're actually being very creative and in our resources. So students will be sitting in a classroom at Saratoga, will be video conferenced into the classroom here in Queensbury using the same faculty member and just simply adding 8 students to that cohort. So we're excited. We'll be kicking that off this spring. We're currently recruiting, also equipping the classroom in Saratoga, and again, continuing to try to, as best we can, meet the healthcare needs. We've had some new transfer pathways. We have a new 2+2 with COBOL for agricultural business. And also we're excited that SUNY Plattsburgh has been approved to launch their Bachelor of Science degree in Information Security here at Queensbury. So another baccalaureate completion program, not only for our students, of course, to feed in from our highly popular IT networking cybersecurity program, but also any community members that may not have had a bachelor's degree yet. They will now have the opportunity to do that. So we think that will be a really strong pipeline to again fill another industry gap, which is of course in the IT field. We've done a lot to try to continue to address enrollment. Of course, you'll hear a little bit about it in terms of its impact on our budget. You know, we've been experiencing a decline in enrollment. Everyone knows that. Every day we're getting more and more information nationally about really what I would call a burgeoning crisis in terms of declining enrollment, particularly at community colleges. So we're doing everything we can to try to look at new and creative ways, not only to, of course, support our service area, but look at ways we can diversify our enrollment to help make up some of those demographic gaps. Of course, employment is high right now, so less students go back to college. Their community colleges always have an inverse relationship to the economy and employment. So we're looking at new ways. So I'll talk about Fall 22 in a minute, but you may remember that we were approved to offer prison education at Washington Correctional Facility, which we launched this past fall with great success. We started with 22 students. We had 20 that continued in the spring, and the only reason we lost 2 is they were released. So, but the faculty that have taught, we're providing business classes. The faculty that have taught in the program have just been overwhelmingly positive about the experience, how engaged and grateful the students are to be able to have this opportunity. So we'll be doubling that size cohort for this fall and looking forward to opportunities to continue to expand our reach. Data has shown over and over again that educating those who are incarcerated provide lots of opportunities for when they're released, and we're glad to be part of that. We've been providing our live interactive video classes to Qatar through our studios here on the Queensbury campus. And again, that's a program that's continuing to increase. We offer liberal arts courses as well as our full cybersecurity degree program. And we're continuing to look at ways where we might be able to have a global presence in other countries to continue to scale up that effort. You may have seen the press announcement. We've been working with Saratoga Springs City School District, who has had a long history of providing very extensive community education. And they approached us about a year ago to say that, you know, we'd like to partner with the college and move some of those classes and under the leadership and administration of the college. So we just signed that agreement about a month ago, which means we will now be the leader and the administrator of community education courses throughout Saratoga, particularly Northern Saratoga County, which is quite extensive. It'll bring more people to our Saratoga Center, but we'll also be utilizing the Saratoga Springs City School District facilities. And so we're really excited to continue to be more and more in the community of Saratoga, which we have been in for 45 years. We're currently working on an academic program gap analysis. So we've contracted with an agency that will help us identify, are there gaps in our program offerings where there's high demand in our region, and making sure that we're aligning as best we can programs that are meeting the demands of our workforce partners. So we expect to have that information by late summer, early fall, and that will inform any future program development and also looking for funding if necessary. We've had continued good growth in early college high school, which is our program in 4 career areas: advanced manufacturing, IT networking, media arts, and business entrepreneurship. And this year, we really focused a lot of efforts on increasing our applicants in those programs. And I'm happy to say, as of right now, we went from 33 applications to 47, particularly from Washington County. And I just want to say that for small schools, they pay for the students to attend the early college program. So it's a financial investment on behalf of the school district. But this type of increase shows us that people are really understanding the value of a student being able to pursue a career pathway as early as their junior year in high school. They take high school courses, college courses. When they graduate, they can earn up to 30 college credits at no cost to the student. And they also leave with industry recognized credentials. And many of those students now move on into our associate degree program. So, you know, we started this back in 2013. And we've seen it continue to grow. We've seen the growth of the pipeline of students coming to SUNY Adirondack. Of course, that's good for us as well, but it's good for the community. And this past commencement, that of course was wonderful in the arena. We had, I think, about at least 16 or 20 students who graduated with their associate degree who had started in our Pathways program through the early college program. So great program, and we're really proud to continue to expand that. We've been working on expanding enrollment through athletics. We've invested some in our gymnasium now. We have a new weight room and we've done a lot of blinging, I would say, of the gym. It's kind of like lipstick on a pig, but it looks better. And we've done some upgrades in terms as best we can within the resources we have. But soon we'll be breaking ground on our synthetic turf field complex, which has been on our plan. It was on our last master plan. We had it approved back in 2019. In 2020, it was stalled due to state funding, and now we're ready to go. So that will kick off shortly, and we expect the full complex to be completed sometime late in the fall. We've also been working on a much more streamlined recruitment and marketing of students to play sports here. We're working towards full rosters with a mix of local and out of area students. And to date, we have increased by 95% recruits. And what that means is, instead of kind of waiting until students show up like, hey, are you interested in playing basketball? We're out there recruiting and bringing students really from all over the country and from our service area. So this not only helps our overall enrollment, it also, of course, helps our residence hall. We've invested heavily in supporting student success. It's one thing to get the students in the door. It's a whole nother process to help students stay. And as we know, and particularly in light of COVID, mental health and wellness has become a crisis for our country, our society, and certainly we're a microcosm of that society, and we've seen it play out readily in our students. So part of our stimulus funds are going to be invested in really scaling up our health and wellness services. We're working on renovating some space to create a more centralized health and wellness center. Of course, our partnership with Hudson Headwaters for the mobile health van. We also are in partnership with Glens Falls Hospital to have a part-time nurse on campus starting this fall. And of course, investing in mental health services. Our stimulus funds in general, just as you are experiencing, we've allocated a significant amount specifically to students. The numbers are there. That's a pretty substantial amount of money to help our neediest students, and they're all very grateful for the support. And sometimes it's still not enough, but we've been making progress there. And I'm happy to say, thanks to Warren County for approving our application to administer the Adirondack peer-to-peer program for veterans in both Warren and Washington County. We're very excited about that. As you know, we've had a long history of supporting veterans in this community with our Randall's Veterans Resource Center and of course the students that enroll here. But this will allow us to scale up those services not only to students on campus, but to the community at large. So thank you for your support on that and your faith that we will carry on that tradition. And finally, strengthening our organizational capacity. Like every other employer in the area, we've had significant workforce gaps as well. We've never had this many searches or vacancies in a year that I've ever seen. So it's been a challenge, just like it has been for every other industry, but we continue to develop new ways to try to identify candidates. Just this week, we launched a remote work pilot. We're piloting an opportunity for some people, depending on their role, of course, to be able to work remotely on a hybrid model, not every day, but potentially a couple days a week. We heard loud and clear from many of our employees that that was something that they were looking to achieve. And so we worked very diligently all year on developing the policies and the infrastructure to be able to do that. So we'll be piloting it. We'll be evaluating that at the end of the fall semester and see if that's working and continue to move forward. All of this related to how do you create a good workplace for anyone who's coming to SUNY Adirondack, just like every other employer is doing. And in that vein, we are in the process of hiring our first Chief Diversity Officer to focus on improving our student outcomes. We've disaggregated our data. There's very clear equity gaps in student success outcomes that we need to address. And we want to support our diverse students and our employees. So we'll be looking forward to having someone who can lead that effort, that can get up every day focusing on that and continuing the good work the college has been doing both internally and externally. And with that, I would say enjoy the beautiful summer that we all get to experience here in the Adirondacks. And with that, I will open up for any questions. Peter.
Just a comment, that last screen, I love it.
It gives me joy. James.
Is there a way to get a breakdown of the early students by school?
Oh, sure. So the question for those on Zoom was providing a breakdown of the students enrolled in the Early College Career Academy by school. We can send that out to your assistants and share that. Yep.
Tuition paid by prisoners, where does that come from?
The question is tuition paid by those who are incarcerated, where does that come from? So we were part of a pilot group of it called Second Chance Pell, which is sponsored through the Department of Education, which allows incarcerated individuals who are eligible to utilize Pell Grants to be able to pay that tuition. So as you would probably expect, most of those who are incarcerated would qualify for those grants. So that's how they pay their tuition. That program is extended, and of course you may know that New York State also passed in this legislative session to allow TAP to be used for incarcerated individuals. So we anticipate that this will open up a lot more opportunities across the state. You may or may not know, but up until about 95, TAP was available for incarcerated individuals. There was a lot of discussion at that point. It was eliminated. And of course that eliminated any opportunity for folks to better themselves. And so both between Pell and TAP, we think this will certainly provide new opportunities across the state.
So what's the typical tuition right now for students?
Well, you'll see it in the budget, yep, the full-time tuition is just around $5,300 a year. Yep. Oh, and I meant to mention, I said I would do that. So fall 22 in terms of enrollment, the good news, we continue to see a positive trend forward in terms of our applications as well as our registrations for fall in our new students and in our full-time continuing students. So we're seeing a little bit of a positive uptick, which of course is what we want to see after what we've seen over the past couple years. As a reminder, the group of students that we've seen the largest decline is in our Pell eligible students. Those are our low-income students, the students who have been hit hardest by COVID are the most vulnerable. And so, you know, we're working hard to try to get those students back into higher education, not only here at SUNY Adirondack, but really across the country. So that can be a whole big loss to society, and we're working hard to try to get those students re-engaged in education.
Do you relate that to the fact that the high wage increase they're going into the workforce?
The question was relating to high wage in the workforce. It doesn't help. I think that, and you know, I would say this to anyone. It helps the individual, and I wouldn't want anyone to not do that. I think what our bigger concern is if that's a short term, what's the long-term impact of that? And I think that we all understand that, you know, any sort of post-secondary education, regardless of the time, will help a person to have the long-term financial impact. But yes, right now you can, you know, make a pretty good living wage without a college degree. It's a hard argument when someone needs to put food on the table and put gas in their car, et cetera. So we're definitely up against that, as well as, of course, the continued decline in demographics throughout the Northeast. And so we have our work cut out to get folks back into higher education. Ben.
I want to compliment you on including alumni profiles, 2 alumni profiles at the beginning of your proposed budget report. As the husband and dad to alumni, my son was featured in the Quarterly Alumni publication. I've reviewed countless budgets, but nothing speaks to me more than actually seeing where our money is going to. Our district attorney in Warren County, a lot of community leaders from all walks of life. The son of our former Warren County chairman of our Board of Supervisors, Bill Thomas' son, who's a member of your faculty or administration. The list goes on and continue to get those quarterly publications out, because I think it really resonates when we see people walking on our streets in our communities who have graduated from SUNY Adirondack and are doing great things in the community.
Thank you. For those on Zoom, it was a very gracious acknowledgement of profiling our alumni, both in the budget book as well as in our Community Roots publication that comes out quarterly. And I have to say that I would give full credit to our marketing department as well as our Director of Alumni Relations. We really have been much more laser focused on identifying alumni in our community as well as in other communities and lifting them up to of course, our community. And I appreciate everything you said, and glad that you noticed that our goal is to really just continue to demonstrate the incredible impact we have on our community and your investment. So thank you.
Dr. Duffy, there is Supervisor Clary DeGrease, her hand.
Okay.
She didn't ask the questions.
Go ahead.
Dr. Duffy, I just wanted to go back to the graduation and how, what an incredible afternoon that was, and talking with the students that were there. in realizing the impact that ADK has made on their lives. And whether they're from Warren County or Washington County or from Quaytar, I think your suggestion to, because it was very emotional. If I just pinched my thigh, I could keep my emotions under control. I have to tell you, it doesn't really work. It was quite an emotional day. And it was to hear the students and what they've gotten out of their education. Every school in Washington County or Warren County should be encouraging their kids to sign up and come, because what you have offered them, is incredible to hear one-on-one. I also was happy to see Chef Mike, is it Mike?
Matt,
Get for the Excelsior Award. I can't think of a better person to have received that.
Mhm.
And so it was quite a day, and it's certainly a overall picture of what you did this past year. All came to that graduation. So thanks to the whole staff at ADK, and thanks for supporting our communities, and looking forward with vision and purpose. The Quaytar student was so excited, and I'm sure she's going to take it back, and it'll be used more and more. So
great.
great plans. Thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We can't do it without our dedicated faculty and staff for sure. And it was very energizing to be back in the arena, and a lot of excited students, of course, parents, family members, friends, etc. So, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any other questions before I turn it over to Anne-Marie? We should have recorded this, a great recruitment video, all these nice things. So thank you so much. All right, with that, I'm going to let Anne-Marie.
Share my,
Yep.
share the screen.
So first you gotta go in. I now anoint you. Oh my microphone.
I'm allowed to begin with, so, except for Zoom World, I wouldn't need this. Sue, you might not be muted. Just giving you a heads up. Okay, thank you and good morning. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Anne-Marie Scheidegger. I'm the college's Vice President for Administrative Services and Treasurer. I believe I've met probably 99% of people in the room. But thank you for coming today. I did bring, just as a little reminder, but I'm not even sure it's needed, some results from the college's economic impact study that we did just a few years ago. One of the things that I think is important that we just talked about a little bit, rate of return to our students. So it is a difficult time to attend college for those individuals that have a lot going on in their lives right now, but the rate of return on our education to our students is 16%. You are not going to get that anywhere else. You're not getting it in the stock market. You're not getting it at your local bank, as much as we love our local banks. It's a 16% rate of return to our students. SUNY Adirondack generates about $142.1 million in total income added to our region. Total jobs supported in our region, 2,247. We're very proud of that. And interestingly, to each of you in the room, the rate of return to our taxpayers, 4%. Again, I think that's a number for us to be pretty proud of. So that was just a little bit of a highlight from some work we did a few years ago. We do it fairly regularly, so we'll be looking to do it again at some point in the near future. And I do know we did just talk about our higher education emergency relief funds, those government HERF funds, for a brief moment. They're not highlighted much in this budget, but as a reminder, that was a significant amount of money coming into the college that literally went right back into Warren, Washington, and Saratoga counties, the 3 counties that we serve and support, and went back to those counties in the way of aid to our students that come here from your counties, and also payroll dollars to our employees who are residents of your county. So along with some other investments in our facility that we made. But what I am here today to do is to present to you the college's 2022-23 budget. It will not be an exciting presentation, so I apologize. We put Dr. Duffy first on purpose. But it actually is almost exactly the presentation that we made to you last year. So there really is almost no change in our budget year over year. So again, that doesn't really help make it exciting, but I tell Chris regularly, budgets really shouldn't be exciting. If they are, we have a problem, so. Oh, I need to start the slideshow, I apologize. We already just talked about our alumni, so I'll go over these really quickly, but we do include them in our budget book each year. And here's our 2022-23 proposed budget and executive summary. It is $30,731,000. It's a 0.9% or $266,354 increase over last year, which was $30.4 million. I'm just going over exactly the pages in this book, so please feel free to follow along. We do need to present our grants separately to you. That is a requirement. Our 22-23 proposed grant budget, $2,429,003. This is an amazing amount of money for SUNY Adirondack, something we were not able to present prior to Dr. Duffy's arrival at SUNY Adirondack. That number was almost zero each year. And this has been a wonderful, wonderful, very strategic investment in the college. We do present changes. Our board is always interested in which grants have changed. And as Chris mentioned earlier, we received a SUNY Nursing Emergency Training Grant for $250,000. That is the project that she was talking about that will be happening at Saratoga. Our total budget, including grants, $33,160,003. I do like to show you our total historical operating budgets, mostly to be able to point out what I believe we are, which is a good steward of our fiscal resources. The college has appropriately expanded and contracted its budget as enrollment grows and declines. I think it's important to note that. You'll see a significant reduction in our budget from 2019-20 to 2021 and on. So when we did experience a very sharp decline in enrollment, we did very painfully contract our budget. Our budget is 80% personnel. So any contraction in our budget equates to people, and those are not easy choices to make. Little information about the budgeted FTE included in this budget. It's an increase of only 43 FTE over the current year. We do believe that that is a very conservative projection. Those of you that have been here for a number of years know that I am conservative. I am not going to be aggressive in a budget. I would rather have more money at the end of the year than not have enough. And so while we do believe this is a conservative budget, it is what we have built these numbers on. So that would be total FTE for 22-23 of 1,910. We have experienced enrollment declines that are very, very similar to our state and national peers, as Dr. Duffy mentioned. We won't spend a lot of time talking about that, but community colleges in general, for those in the room that are a little newer, do typically have an inverse relationship with the economy. When the economy is strong, when wages are high, people work. And when the economy falters or we enter a recession and wages decline, people come back to get reskilled, retrained, and to be able to make a better living for themselves. This is SUNY Adirondack's historical enrollment from 2016 forward, and again, 2022 is a projection. We no longer really budget based on that budgeted FTE number. It's important, we're required to produce it. We need to provide it to SUNY System Administration, but we really budget based on full-time headcount enrollments, part-time credit hours, and those high school credit hours. They are different. Those students that enroll only pay a third of the tuition. And as you can see, it's the blue line in this graph. It is the line that is increasing. So while that is wonderful, it comes with a third of the revenue of other students that enroll at SUNY Adirondack. So It became important about 2018-19 for us to start budgeting differently and to really budget very specifically to take that into account. I do like to show our operating revenues by source. This is just a peer comparison. So it's not that it has to match our peers, but it's a data point like any other. We like to benchmark ourselves against others just to get an idea of if there is an area that maybe needs improvement or that we need to focus on. You can see our student revenue really is in line with our peers, and you may not notice, but for some of you that are very focused on the fine details, we're comparing to 1920 for our peers because that's the most recent information that we have. SUNY wasn't able to get out the 2021 annual report yet. We should get it sometime in the very near future. But I think there's also a benefit of comparing to 1920 in that that's the last pre-pandemic year. And so any comparison during the pandemic, while it is a comparison, I think all of us hope to get back to pre-pandemic operations. And so for the long term, those really are the numbers that I'm monitoring and watching. So our student revenue is becoming more and more in line with our peers. We are the green bar, our peers are the blue. Our sponsor contribution is several percentage points less than our peers. This is not new news. We've been talking about this every time we meet with you for several years. We do make that up in chargebacks. However, what it does mean is that students do bear a larger percentage of the burden. They are not in the 22-23 budget because this is a percentage of the whole and there are federal aid funds included in there. If they weren't, that 37% would be up closer to 43, 45 where it has been in prior years. So that's important to note. We do receive less as a percentage of the whole from our sponsors, and our students in correlation bear that additional burden. Just so that you know, we will be coming to you with a proposal the next time we meet in the fall semester about a way to start rectifying that swing and reduce the amount of our student burden and increase our sponsor share.
So that won't be in next year's budget.
It's not in this next year's budget.
So it doesn't have to be in our next year's budget. So
Well, our budget years are not exactly the same,
okay.
but yes, we're allowing some time for that conversation for sure, which is not a new conversation. We've been having it for several years. We presented our long-term financial plan to you at this point almost 5 years ago. And we've talked about it every time we've met with you since. Yes,
I don't want to interrupt your flow here,
that's okay.
but since I've been here, sponsor support has been hovering right around the 12% of your budget. So, 12.5 or something like that. What do you think sponsor support should be?
We do. Our peer community colleges are about 16%. And that is our goal. That is what we included over a long period of time in our long-term financial plan. In the back of this book, and the question really was about historical sponsor support. I want to bring you to the right page here. In the back of this book on page 10 is sponsor support from 1960 on. We have included all of the percentages, but if we did, you would see that sponsor support mirrored our peers not all that long ago. It hasn't in the last 10 to 15 years, but it did before that. I can tell you what happened. There was a period of time, maybe 2005 to 2010, where the sponsors, whoops, I could get the years on here. You can see it. Where sponsor contribution was zero each year, 0% increase. That happened in blocks of time, a few times. And what that does is over time that erodes your total contribution as a percentage of the total. So there were times in the history of our partnership together where the sponsors were not able to increase their share each year. And it went on for a couple of years each time. And so what you're seeing now is the cumulative long-term effect of that, which is why when I talk about long-term financial planning, it is so important to the college for our sponsors to give us some increase each year. And we all have agreed on that 2% number, and that is what we're presenting to you today. So just to put that out there, it's not different than we've talked about before. But the 2% number really is not enough. It's not enough to keep pace with our increases in personnel and benefits, as well as we do manage them. But even in your own budgets at your own counties, I think you're aware that 2% is not enough to keep pace with your personnel increases. And we are a people business. Again, it's 80% of our budget. So we are going to spend a considerable amount of time talking about that, though, the next time that we meet. Yes.
So
Brian.
leading up to that discussion, these things here are all gonna be affected by that discussion.
They absolutely will.
They're all related. So like right now, I see the state revenue. Why did we lag in state revenue? Is that partly because of this situation?
This is an excellent question. And again, these are percentages of the total, and the comparison here is pre-pandemic, pre-federal HERF aid. Do you see the other revenue number and how different that is? It's because we've budgeted $1.7 million of federal HERF funds to balance this budget. So we did not have that. Our peers did not have that in 1920. And so that's the difference you're seeing in state and other. It's the federal money. Normally, our graphs would be extremely similar, with the difference of maybe half a percentage point, because some of the very small community colleges in New York State receive a very small amount of state aid called small community college aid that SUNY Adirondack does not receive. It's minuscule in total. But if you were to look at the budgets we've presented to you previously, those state revenue numbers would be almost exactly the same.
Okay.
Just a little information about our operating revenue that is under the graph in your booklet, but I'm not able to show it all on one slide. It would make Dr. Duffy cringe when I put really small things on big slides. But tuition and fees, we do remain one of the most affordable community colleges in New York State. Open access is one of the college's values. We did just talk about our sponsor support. It really hasn't substantially changed in over 15 years. State aid, there's good news and disappointing news there. The state did appropriate 100% of the current year 21-22 approved base aid in next year's budget. However, that appropriation represents the lowest funding from the state since 2014-15, and a cumulative loss of $500,000 to SUNY Adirondack. We have work to do when it comes to state funding for community colleges in New York State. And as you just mentioned, that other revenue number includes $1.7 million in federal relief funds to offset expenses associated with the coronavirus and lost tuition revenue from that sharp decline in enrollment that we really saw directly related to COVID.
Without that, though, you'd be telling a whole different story.
Yeah.
We absolutely would, for sure. We're very grateful for that aid. I can tell you, before we knew that it was coming, Eric, Lisa, Dr. Duffy, the executive team here, we had countless very difficult and disturbing conversations. Without that aid, it would be very difficult for us to continue to do business. Anyone here that has a business knows that there's a level, right? You can cut only so much, and then you become unable to continue to do your mission. And we would be close to that without that federal aid. We were having some very grim looking conversations before we knew about it. So we're very grateful for it. It worked. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. New York State sector-wide historical support information. I have not provided this before. I think it's an important conversation, especially for the individuals in this room. Just look at this graph. This is New York State support for all of its community colleges. Sector-wide, it's a 13.4% loss in state aid since 2014-15. Cumulatively, that is $64 million lost to our 30 community colleges. Little note about Excelsior. Excelsior Scholarship is a last dollar tuition award for eligible students. Anytime our students receive money, we're very happy about that. We're very grateful for that. However, New York State froze that Excelsior tuition rate in 2017. It was supposed to reset every 2 years. Originally it was 4, then they said, oh, community colleges, it'll be 2 for you, we understand. And it was supposed to reset every 2 years, and they did not allow that rate to reset. They've kept it frozen since 2017. It will reset for the first time in next year's budget. And again, for Adirondack, that was a cumulative loss of $500,000 in state aid revenue. That's a different $500,000 than I just told you about. So if you add them together, that's $1 million. And it just kind of feels like, you know, it's never one really sharp reduction. It's a reduction here and a reduction there and a mandated, you must do this, but we're not going to provide you any funding for it there. And it adds up significantly.
They treat us the same if it makes you feel any better.
I know, it's shared pain here. I also like to show you our operating expenditures. We're showing them to you by function as a comparison. Our peers, again, 1920 is gray, and then you see SUNY Adirondack's historical and budgets with the darker green being the 22-23 proposed budget. Really, what we're showing you here is there isn't a lot of change. Again, personnel and benefits are the majority of what we are at SUNY Adirondack. We are a people business. You will see a little bit of an increase in equipment there. And that was equipment that was purchased with those federal HERF funds to help us be able to serve our students remotely. So we had to purchase some additional technology equipment to enable that remote learning. But other than that, our spending basically mirrors our peers, has not changed significantly over time. And I think it's important to note, and Eric is in the room, so I will thank him for this. Since we have had Eric here, we have been able to see the impact of our decisions before we've made them. He's very, very good at putting together that analysis for us. And so despite that $1.4 million of reduced expenses since 1920, we were able to do that in a way that didn't impact one area of the college more than the other unintentionally. So you can see that the spending really hasn't changed much over time. I've worked in a lot of places where we've had to reduce funds, and it usually is not that clean and strategic, and it can have unintended consequences. And we were able to make a pretty significant reduction in our budget and do so in a very fair and equitable way across the institution. Do like to mention our unrestricted fund balance. Again, because we do have the HERF funds, the federal HERF funds, we are not appropriating any fund balance in this proposed budget. At the end of 22-23, we do project having a fund balance of $4,192,495. You will note in here that the college did experience a one-time increase in fund balance at the end of the 2009 fiscal year. And that was the result of that pause in in-person learning when we all were forced to go remotely. We stopped spending money on a lot of things. But in addition, some of that HERF funds that we took as lost revenue went into the fund balance in that year for various reasons. So there was a one-time increase that you'll see there in that fund balance. This does get us very close to the blue line is the Government Finance Officers Association recommendation for fund balance. And it does get us pretty close to that 2 months operating expenditures. So this is not a large amount to have in your fund balance and is not unusual to the institution. Back in 2006, 2007, we did have that, and then you'll see that it did start to decline. What started that decline was a mid-year reduction in state aid 1 year. So the state came in the middle of the year and significantly reduced the aid that it had promised to New York's community colleges, and we were forced to take that money out of our fund balance.
But this affects your chargeback rate when we differentiate 2 months, right? Or
This picture does not.
this one doesn't, but
No.
we've had to rebuild it before and it's brought it down.
That is accurate. If you put money back into your fund balance, it does impact your chargeback rate. we don't have that information presented in here, but on page 6 of your budget book are the budget parameters. It includes information some of you have asked about what will the tuition rate be next year. We approved a 3% increase in tuition after several years of 0. But the chargeback rate for next year will go up $20 to $4,200. This number used to be closer to $1,500, $1,600. We've done a very good job of increasing the chargeback rate. Saratoga County now pays the largest portion of money that comes into the college, and that's due to this chargeback rate. The chargeback rate is a direct correlation between your sponsor support and the number of students that you send here. And the college does impact it in certain ways, but that's really the majority of what that calculation is. So again, when we talk about our long-term fiscal health, why it's so important to build that sponsor contribution, because that does continue to increase that chargeback rate, which means more money to the college from those other counties that send students here. The major county is Saratoga. Another small note about fund balance. The college is self-insured for its health insurance. Most of you do know that. In addition to the balance I just mentioned to you, we do maintain a board designated fund balance of $2,139,781 set aside very specifically in case the college were to be impacted by high cost claims. We pay every single dollar of expenses for health insurance and prescriptions for our employees. And so it is common these days to be hit with high cost claims. And so our board, at the recommendation of our health insurance consultant, when we decided to become fully self-insured, was to set aside 6 to 7 months of the college's actual historical spend. And we have achieved that number. So there is a small amount of fund balance there to protect us from any high cost claims, along with our stop loss insurance. We just talked about our sponsors' contribution, but here are the numbers for you. We are proposing a 2% increase in sponsors' contribution, as we have brought forward to you in the past. For Warren County, that would bring your contribution to $2,173,075, 58% of the sponsors' contribution. Washington County's number would be $1,613,314, or 42% of the sponsors' contribution. They are small increases, $42,000 and $31,000 for each of you. The split between you, we calculate based on an agreement that was made between Warren and Washington County when the college was funded. That is not anything that the college does other than simply calculate it for you for the budget purposes. And it is based on your enrolled FTE. So that calculation is based on your last fall's FTE enrollment and how that is split between each county. The total sponsor contribution, as we mentioned, would be 12.3% of operating revenue. And our goal is to get a little bit closer to our peers of 15.5% over time. And as you can see, it has not changed significantly over time, but it does kind of ebb and flow and dip up and down a little bit. So was there a question?
No, I was just, didn't see that graph, that page.
Might not be in there, but you do have this presentation.
Yeah.
We can get it to you again.
Page 6, the post conference tab.
And so in summary, what is important to this group here, we are asking our sponsors to approve our proposed 2022-23 operating budget, $30,731,000, and a restricted grant budget of $2,429,003, for a total operating budget of $33,160,003, inclusive of your 2% sponsor increase, which I've broken out again. We did also provide to each county a draft sponsor resolution. It includes language that SUNY has crafted and that they ask that you please consider using as long as the college is using HERF funds in their budget, which we will be doing again this year. So we have provided that draft sponsor resolution. We might have put it on the table outside as well. Okay, we did. So we cannot force you to use that language, but SUNY is requesting that you do please consider using it. Their legal team put it together. Any questions? Yes.
But not really a question, but since we're gonna have this discussion in the fall, we don't pick anything up in one trip. We need to hear it 2 or 3 times. Can you give us a short overview of how that would affect us from where we are now to where we would be headed? What it would do to the chargeback rate, because it's all intertwined. Is there just a basic thing you could give us today, so it's on our minds of what questions we should be thinking about and asking when we meet again on this?
Sure. The question was, is there information that I'm prepared to provide today related to what a long-term sponsor percentage increase would look like and its impact on the chargeback rate and student tuition is what we have discussed. I did not bring that today. I'm not prepared to present that today, but I think we can talk about offline what that might look like.
Yeah.
You know, do you want, should I? Yeah. You know, do you want us to come to your committee meetings and start there and then have a larger joint county meeting? You would like that process to look like? To your point, it's a lot of information that is difficult to consume all at once. And it is somewhat related, but again, that the goal over time, over a period of time, would be to increase the local sponsor share to match that of our peers. And we have had discussions about how you're splitting out that share and what that might look like. Right now, it's based on FTE. It can be based on anything you decide. That's a decision for Warren and Washington County to make. The college is happy to help you analyze what the impacts of that choice might be. And we've done a good amount of that work already. But for example, when it comes to a capital project, you don't split it based on FTE. You split your capital projects based on your total local assessed values. There's a different term for that. You all probably know it better than I do. The college attorney knows it very well. But when you split capital projects, you use that instead. And so we've discussed that a little bit as well.
But in the long run, this will, if we increase a certain amount, whatever that is, it will also increase the chargeback rate a certain amount, and that will either make us able to sustain our tuition rate, lower it, or raise it less. We're somewhere in between, but we don't know exactly but that's what we're talking about. I guess that is what we were talking about. What we presented to you previously was, Eric and I dubbed it the shared pain model. The college had to do its work to maintain and monitor its expenses. And I feel confident telling you that we have done that work. We cut $1.4 million in personnel out of our budget. We've self-insured and saved, I would gather to say almost $800,000 a year by doing that. And so I'm not sure there's a lot more the college can do to manage its expenses and continue to deliver on its mission. The other piece of that was for the sponsors to increase their share, which then increased the chargeback rate, and it reduced the percentage increase needed from students in the future. It did not decrease tuition. But without an increase in sponsor share, what we were projecting was a minimum of a 5% increase in tuition each year. That is not something that we want to pass on to our students. But this is the long-term inverse relationship between sponsor support and student tuition. You can see it if you look at the college's history, that total operating revenue graph. There's a direct correlation between student revenue and sponsor support. And so the goal was to be able to reduce that annual increase to students by increasing sponsor support. And frankly, the state needs to increase its support. And so it needed to come a little bit from everywhere. There wasn't just one thing. And I think, Dr. Duffy and the presidents are doing a good job advocating with the state for additional support. We do consider that
flat amount of base aid to be a win in a lot of ways. It's not based on FTE. It's what we've been asking for, to recognize that there's a certain amount of aid that's needed to support your community colleges, and an FTE today is not the same as an FTE 20 years ago. An FTE today, a full-time equivalent enrollment, could be 5 students. Could be 5 students coming here on a part-time basis. They all get financial aid processed. They all park in the parking lot. They all get a bill. They all see an advisor. They're all walking through the hallways. They're all in the library. They all need technology support. You're providing a service to 5 different individuals instead of 1. And so today's FTE is not the same as a historical FTE. So we appreciate that the state recognized that. I don't appreciate that they recognized it at the lowest level in as far back as I can go in history. So it's a win, but is it? Yes.
I did just a very simple calculation based on this proposed budget and with the splits with the 58 and to go from 12.3% sponsored contribution to 16.3, $1.2 million. And that would split out to about 700,000 for Warren County and 500 for Washington County. But again, that doesn't take into account the chargebacks.
And an increase over time in the college's budget. So we have done that work. We've done it several times. We have shared it with the leaders at each county. I just didn't bring it today. I didn't bring it intentionally. I think that today's conversation is about the budget that we are preparing for next year. And historically, when I have tried to mix those 2 conversations, it's created confusion. So I didn't bring it intentionally, but I do appreciate the active conversation about it. And we're certainly willing to start those conversations as soon as possible. But for us, for today, the important thing was the budget for next year. We can't move forward without one. So the last time I tried to mix the 2, it didn't go well. So I'm trying to learn my lesson.
But you're kind of fortunate, because Frank and I did this for a while and come before, so it's kind of a situation where you're on a different schedule with your budget than we are with our budget. So if we attack this in the fall, are we building it in the 24 budget? And you have time to, our money to absorb any difference in mid-year in the cross? Or do we have to minimize it and have some in 1 year and the rest in the following year? We need to know that before we work on our fall budgets, I guess is why I'm asking the questions.
So we're happy to start those conversations tomorrow if you'd like.
Okay.
It doesn't have to wait to the fall. We just typically have met as a joint county twice a year. And I'm hearing that there's a desire to maybe meet sooner than that. And so we are happy to set up those meetings and start those conversations as soon as possible. So what would be the best timeframe for you to make a decision by? September?
Well, yeah, but if we know that we don't have to worry about it by 24, the talks can go on all through the
Well, it
winter.
would be the
But if
20,
we have to have one,
24 budget.
yes,
would
but if
be
we know we have to have a
in
portion
the-
of it in
no,
23
that's-
because of the gap,
Right.
then we need to know by September. But if it's not, and you've got enough fund balance to cover the gap, not that we want you to push it on that, there has to be a way to get through that gap, that's all.
I think what I'm hearing is the summer is probably a good time to have those conversations. And it's not a big lift on our end because we've already done the work. So if these groups are willing to meet together over the summer and we can touch base about what that might look like, and should we meet individually first or jointly, we're ready to have those conversations as quickly as possible. If that helps you to set your budget for next year to have it by September.
And I think it's just good to have the overall conversation so nobody feels like they got hit in the head with it. That's
Yeah, I think the sooner the better, and even if it's not built into the structurally into the county budget for next year, at least we have it on our mind.
Yes.
On the chart with the unrestricted fund balance, that does not include your self-insurance fund balance, correct?
It does not. That is a separate additional designated fund balance.
How many years have we been self-insured?
This is our second year being fully self-insured for the medical. We've been fully self-insured for the prescription for, it must be at this point at least 10 years. And we've been fully self-insured for a high deductible for probably 8 years. So our employees have a very small deductible. When we were fully self-insured on the medical, our employees had a very small deductible, but the plan was a high deductible plan, and the college assumed the expenses associated with that gap. And what that does is your premiums are less if you have a high deductible plan through Highmark or whatever else. We were not comfortable passing that on fully to our employees, a $12,000 deductible, a $10,000 deductible. That would not have gone well at the bargaining table at all. But the college fully absorbed that cost after the employee.
Through an
deductible.
HRA or HSA or something?
No, because the college assumed it, not
You
the
assumed it,
employee.
oh.
So the broker that we use, same broker I think that Warren County uses, they have the ability to track that and bill the college. They have a software system that they built that enabled us to be able to do that. And so we just received the bill every week, and so we paid that deductible.
So there's been nothing to throw that off course so far, everything's gone.
You probably should not ask that question, but as of this point in time, we have not had to access that designated fund balance money. So we have had a couple high cost claims that were fully absorbed by our stop loss insurance. And again, those of you that self-insure, I know Warren County does at least a piece of your health insurance, are aware that if you are not fully self-insured, your stop loss policy is limited. If you've only self-insured like the prescription and not the medical, your stop loss policy is very limited. You are not able to fully protect yourself until you insure both. So we have had a couple of claims each year that hit that stop loss policy. But outside of that, so far, we've been fortunate. But we also very actively manage and monitor our entire wellness program for our employees. So we do have a wellness program. There is a wellness credit for employees that participate. And so we've kind of done the work, I think, in a lot of different ways to ensure that our employees are at least going and attending their annual physicals, you know, their basic preventative appointments. When you participate in the wellness program, if there is something of concern, high cholesterol, that will be brought to your attention, and the opportunity to manage that so that it doesn't manifest itself in something worse down the road, which also equates to larger dollar expenses. So, and again, that came through
So the
our
way that's set
health
up,
insurance plan.
you're set up if something bad does happen, you've got this money set aside. How is that structured to replenish it if that situation occurs, or is that just attacked in a particular situation at a time?
As of right now, it is not structured to replenish it should that happen. So it also didn't have the amount in it today that it did several years ago. And I think the college has been creative over its history when it has needed to. So when we self-insured our health insurance plan, we put our employees on a self-insured Humana Medicare plan. And that saved the college about $500,000 a year because they were under the college's plan. They could not go on to a Medicare, the retirees, thank you. Retiree eligible employees. Medicare eligible, excuse me. And so that saved about $500,000 a year. So for 3 years, we took that money and we used it to fund this board designated amount. And that increased it by about $1.5 million over the last 3 years. Our accounting team also managed some grants on behalf of SUNY, and we took the revenue that they paid us to do that work. We outsourced ourselves. We took the revenue they paid us to do that work, and we put that in this board designated amount. So
it's grown.
it has grown over the last 3 years to reach the goal that our consultant had to self-insure. So it's in a good place right now. And if we are unfortunate enough to be hit with a high cost claim, we obviously will have to have some discussions about what we do to build that back up.
affordability for the tuition, do you have in your mind at what point does it become detrimental to enrollment for your costs?
That's a question,
Sorry,
Dr.
sorry,
Duffy.
that's-
No,
Wait,
it's-
no,
It's
I'm
a
gonna.
very legitimate question and one that, you know, the community college presidents and business officers are having. Because at some point, the gap even between a community college tuition, city community college tuition and a SUNY state operated campus will be, and it already has, it's continued to decline. So we are concerned about that. And that's why all these conversations about how we're funded, how we continue to operate in an environment to keep access open to students is extremely important. Because there will be a point where your tuition, now that doesn't become the extra value for some students. So right now, SUNY Adirondack at least is still under the maximum TAP award. Some of our peers are already over the maximum TAP award. So for your neediest students, they still have enough TAP if they're fully eligible to cover that full-time tuition. But more and more of our peers are creeping up and we're not far behind at this point. So
ideally, we want to stay under that if we can.
sure, you know, or the state increases the TAP max, which would make sense because, you know, you can't freeze tuition forever. I mean, no one does that. So yeah, those two things, well, three things, state aid, contributions, TAP, and that helps to keep tuition lower.
What's
And
residency
enrollment numbers
cost?
itself too.
Sure, of course. I mean, enrollment has to build back. That's our goal. You know, part of our strategic enrollment management plan is to build back enrollment at least to pre-pandemic level. That will get us, you know, in a much better fiscal situation, and that's our goal. But we've got a lot of variables that keep hitting us on that and trying to reach that goal.
What is the difference between pre-pandemic level, what we're seeing now? Do you know that?
In enrollment?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was,
I know, me too.
12% is sticking in my mind,
Yes.
roughly.
As a percentage, 12.
Yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
thank you.
What's the cost for someone to stay here?
Those costs were just, so we're about 6,500-ish for room and board. Maybe a little bit higher than that right now. I don't have it in-
So the increase in fuel costs makes that a little more.
Maybe.
That's one way to look at it.
I mean, the other thing, you know, that we are trying to do more of, thanks to John Jablonski's leadership and the faculty, is providing more hybrid options for students in terms of classes. So they don't have to drive to campus as often, or of course, can take entirely online classes. You know, there are multiple ways that students can access our education that doesn't necessarily require them to come in and drive into campus on a regular basis. Of course, you know, hopefully a short-term gas increase will subside. But there's also, of course, all the other reasons that students may not be able to get to campus, just reliable transportation, their own childcare issues, family, et cetera. So we are trying to respond, of course, on our academic offerings to ensure that people have multiple flexible options to achieve their degree or their whatever they're pursuing.
Well, that includes most of all my questions got answered, and I kind of appreciate put some of that out there as to what we're looking at in the future. And like Frank said, probably the sooner we can have those conversations and availability and everything. But so for Washington County, Sue needs to move this from the community college to finance, and then we'll vote on it. We're ready to move forward, I believe. So I don't know if Sue can hear me or not.
Brian, I can hear you.
Okay, we're good.
So, and I will move this to finance if there's a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Aye. Okay,
Okay.
Brian, it's yours.
Yeah, Washington County Finance, the motion to move it. I'll move, Brian. Moved by Dave, second. James Griffith. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
And from the Warren County Personnel and Higher Education Committee, I think we still have a forum with the chairman. So, we have a resolution before us. We have a motion. With Mr. Wild.
Can everyone in Zoom hear? Okay, hold on, please.
Motion moved by Supervisor Wild, seconded by Supervisor Powell.
Aye.
Okay. You just seconded the resolution.
Very difficult
And now
time.
we're going to vote. All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And to refer to also.
Okay, we'll call for a vote on resolution we bring to the floor by Supervisor Bruno, second by Supervisor Driscoll. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That's not a lot of people.
Okay, thank you. The last thing on our agenda today was an update on the facilities master plan. Again, our joint county meeting in the fall is generally when we talk about capital projects, and that is our plan again. We will present to you a full detailed presentation on the master plan. I do have it here. It's very large. It's a wonderful document. It's the culmination of several years of work. Just a reminder for you, we started this work pre-pandemic, and we had basically completed it. We decided to take a brief pause and allow the campus to fully work through what the impact of a global wide pandemic might look like on higher education and on our facilities needs. And then make some revisions and changes as needed, which we did do. So our campus community approved this master plan very recently. Our Board of Trustees approved it at their last meeting. And so we will give you a full presentation on it at our next joint county meeting. I can provide the very large document if anyone wants to read through it all, but we'll create a nice engaging presentation for you. Couple highlights, the projects included in this plan total about $62 million. There's probably nothing in here that you haven't heard from us before. And that $62 million number shouldn't be super shocking. The last one was about almost exactly the same amount of money. And when we completed, I said, we're never gonna do this. And Dr. Duffy looked at me and she was like, I'm going to start writing grants. And we've made significant improvements to the campus facilities as a result of that. The deferred maintenance in this plan is extremely minimal, and I'm so proud of that. The college always had about 12 years worth of deferred maintenance on its books. And as a result of the many projects that you as our sponsors helped to realize and implement over the last few years, significantly reduce the deferred maintenance on our campus. So while there is still a list, it is small and it is manageable. And for the first time in my entire tenure at the college, feels like something that we can manage and attack with the chargeback dollars that we do receive over a period of time. So there are some priority projects for us in here, and we will highlight those. And there are some projects that have already started, such as the synthetic turf field, which is breaking ground this week, actually, and we are very excited for that project. We will be opening at the end of the fall semester a health and wellness center for our employees and it's for our students, excuse me. We were just talking about health insurance for employees. It's a health and wellness center for our students on campus. It will be the first time that the college has had one centralized place for students to go for all of their health and wellness needs, along with the other kind of things that we've brought onto campus recently, like the mobile van and those partnerships that we formed in the community. Those will still exist, but students will have one centralized place to be able to learn about them and access them and get the care that they need to help them continue on with their education. So we are starting that work. And there are many, many HVAC upgrades that are happening on campus as a result of those federal HERF funds. So we are trying to attack as much of our deferred maintenance with those dollars as we can. So we'll give you a full presentation on that at our next joint county meeting. It'll probably be far more exciting than the budget presentation you had today, although that turned into a very lively conversation. So you never know. What I can assure you is you've heard from us before that the gym is a priority, and you'll probably be hearing about that again from us in the fall also. So it's still a priority of ours. Very, very utilized building on campus. Very old, very old.
Will we be meeting there?
Yeah.
If you'd like to.
Well, I think it's the best way
not?
to sell something is let's look at it. I mean, I think.
There's no air conditioning, so we'll meet in September,
They're
maybe
not- or
August.
October.
Oh, right in August.
And, you know, wear your lightest attire. Tank tops, flip flops. It's required in that building. We do have staff in that building all summer, and I can tell you they wear, you know, like short sleeves and shorts and fans blowing on them. And
Well, I just remember when we did the major upgrade and we went through and saw the science building, what you used to have, I think had a bigger impression to supervisors in general when you walked in, seeing what was real, whereas if you're just on Zoom and we're all talking to each other, it's like, oh yeah, well, that's not a big deal. It's
Sure.
different when you see it.
we'll include a tour. You can stop into the restrooms while you're in there, the locker rooms. They're blue and pink, so, you know, very dated. And I think that's it. So that's all we have unless there's any other outstanding questions, but I'll leave it to each of you to close your meetings.
Finance is adjourned, we're good. Good.
Washington County is adjourned.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
How is